Hey guys, it's Steve for CollectorMania. Continuing on our 32 series. We moved on to Bant. As you'll see, I kind of took a little bit different approach to this. I know a lot of people building like super crazy powerful like rune decks, stuff like that. So I decided to go with an oldie. This is Treva the Renewer. She is a 6-cost dragon, legendary creature of course. She's got flying, and then whenever Treva the Renewer deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 colors, 1 white. If you do choose a color, then you gain 1 life for each permanent of that color. So a really interesting ability tapped onto a huge flyer. Just a great way to gain a ton of life all at once, especially if you're playing, for example, I know I've seen a few token builds with this, or even like there was one deck in particular that I saw that was just all like sapperlings. Really interesting way to gain, I don't know, I remember one time he gained like 100 life just because he had 1,000,000 tokens. I took a little bit more, I guess, traditional life gain approach to this. It's, once again, it's a little bit more toned down, just kind of for fun. So, Treva the Renewer. Getting into it here, we're going to go into our creatures first. So, of course, you've got to include Soul Sisters in here. So I've got Soul Warden, of course. Really, really cool card. Basically, anytime a creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. So, really, really, really good, of course, for this strategy. And then we've got a responsible card in Scavenging Ooze. This should pretty much be in any deck that's playing anywhere, really, that has green in it. Really great way to deal with problems in your opponent's graveyards. In here, mainly, it's, of course, for like gaining life, because you can exile a ton of creatures and just gain a ton, so really, really good card. I believe this is my Xbox promo one, too, so just fun. Then we've got another Soul Sisters, Suture's Priest. This is a little less known. It's not your traditional Soul Sister, but I definitely feel like it's almost in some ways a lot better. So you can really deal with like opponents that are doing degenerate things. Like, for example, I wish I could play this card in our upcoming deck playoff video against Kylie and his Locust God, because that would be amazing, but I'm playing black-red, so not an option. So, Suture Priest, really, really good. And then we've got Daxos of Melentus. This card can be, of course, a commander on its own. It's a really interesting legendary creature that has a very interesting ability. I like it in this deck because, you know, A, it gains you a bunch of life, B, it lets you play outside of your color pie, essentially. So, really interesting card, not bad for its cost. 2/2 human, not bad. Plus, it's got evasion on there, of course. So, and then we've got a feature card in Kitchen Finks. I've thought to myself that I should include that combo where you essentially just gain infinite life with Kitchen Finks, you know, just by sacking him and then bringing him back without the -1/-1 counter on him. There's a few ways to do it now with, what is her name, Malera, and then the new one that just came out on Amonkhet. So, interesting idea. I may do it at some point if I want to be a little bit more competitive with this deck. Now we've got a favorite of mine in Luxodon Hierarch. It not only gains you a bunch of life when it comes in, it also has a regeneration shield for all of your creatures on it. So you sacrifice it for 2 mana, you regenerate your entire team. So really cool. I know a lot of people have kind of stopped playing around regenerate because not a lot of people see it anymore, but interesting card. Great in 1v1 for, you know, just as a side note. Rock's Faithmender. This card is obviously huge in this deck. This is how you start gaining those 100 life at a turn kind of things. You know, it is absolutely ridiculous. It just doubles all your life gain, so it's really cool. And I mean, you can even attack with it if you need to and gain 2 life. So I mean, that's not terrible. It's a 1/5. It's got a huge butt, so it could block pretty much anything. You know, not bad for its cost. And then we've got Trostani. This is probably the route that most people go when you talk about life gain. You just throw a creature in, then you gain life equal to its toughness. Really, really powerful. It itself can also populate tokens for, like, there's a few in here, but once again, if you're building this commander, you're probably doing a tokens build. Trostani, great card. Cost is a little prohibitive sometimes. 2 green, 2 white can be a little complicated, but just an amazing card. Sunscourge Regent. This is, I always think of that Hydra when what is that? I can't remember. Well, okay, there's a ton of creatures that do this kind of effect, like Tauren Mauler, essentially. This one gains you life in addition, also just becomes bigger, becomes a monster really fast. It's a flyer, so it's got the evasion. Really, really cool card. And then we've got Thragtusk, of course. Really, really fun way to just gain life and then make a token. And another one of my favorites, which can also be the commander, Dragonlord Dromoka. This card is bonkers. It'll shut down like control decks, shut down pretty much anything that anybody wants to do on your turn. So it's a good way to kind of get around, like, for example, if you have a really big play coming up next turn, you just lay Dromoka down and then you've pretty much set yourself up as long as it's not removed. So yeah. Plus it having flying and lifelink is huge. And then we've got a kind of dirty win con with Felidar Sovereign. That you'll see there's a few ways to actually cheat creatures in here. So Felidar Sovereign can sometimes just snipe you a win from nowhere. And it's definitely a card that you should probably run in any kind of life gain strategy. It's kind of akin to like Aetherflux Reservoir in my opinion at this point. Really, really good. Plus it's not a bad body either. So Drogskull Reaver. This is one of my favorites from back in the day in Innistrad. I remember I kept trying to break this card and I kept trying to play with it pretty much in any commander deck that I could fit it in. And finally, I think it found a home. Being able to draw cards when you gain life is huge. You've got to be a little bit careful because you do have to draw the card. So there are points where like you don't want to gain life and draw cards. So I usually try and have either a sack outlet or, you know, just a way to kind of shut down his effect. That way you don't draw yourself out. And then we've got a card that I have only one copy of, and that's Angel, or Avacyn, Angel of Hope. It's a very, very good card, very, very powerful. I think I shift this around every once in a while to different decks. It's found its home in here for now because I feel like the board setup on this is important, so you don't want your stuff to get destroyed. So obviously really powerful, like I said. It comes down and usually everybody's trying to either steal it, clone it, or destroy it, or exile it, I guess, in this point. So awesome. I recommend it for pretty much any strategy that wants a board state, so that's all its strategies. So yeah, really, really good. Okay, so on from that, we're moving on to artifacts. So I've got a little tech here with Pristine Talisman. You don't really care that it only produces colorless mana because you're playing green, so it doesn't really matter. You can usually fetch up whatever you actually need, but it being able to tap and gain you a life at the end of somebody's turn is really, really good as well. So just kind of like a little tech there. And then, of course, we've got Aetherflux Reservoir. This is another win condition. You can usually gain enough life to kill all of your opponents in this deck, so really, really good. Okay. And then we've got Quicksilver Amulet. This card is bonkers once again in this deck. It is a big part of the Felidar combo. It's also a really big part of like the Avacyn. It's a really big part of any of those giant creatures. And you'll kind of see when you look at the deck list that there is I kind of, when I build my decks, I have a ratio that I don't usually include more than like 2 7-drops. In this deck, there's 4. So, I mean, that kind of gives you an example of like, I'm looking for sustain. Like, I'm going the long game pretty much in every game. But if there's a way to cheat them out early, of course, I'm going to take it. And Quicksilver is pretty much one of the best ways to do that. I recommend it in any type of deck that's, you know, once again, trying to flash out big threats at the end of somebody's turn, or just has a number of giant creatures. Like Mael really benefits from having things like this, stuff like that. Okay, and then Alhemmer's Archive. This card is bonkers. Once again, you can draw cards, you can gain life. Once again, you have to be a little bit careful. It's got the same kind of problem with Drogskull. If you are drawing cards, you can't stop yourself, essentially. So you do have to, once again, be a little bit careful, have a way to get rid of this, or have a way to stop gaining or drawing cards. So the combination between Drogskull and Alhemmer's Archive is really, really cool in the beginning, and then it becomes really, really bad. So just be careful. Now we've got Venser's Journal. This card, I haven't played with it for years, actually. I used to include it in a lot of my commander decks. It not only gives you an unlimited hand size, but gains you a ton of life at the beginning of your upkeep. So really, really great in this strategy, once again. Really helps out with that Aetherflux Reservoir. Usually off this card, you can, I mean, especially if you've cast like a few spells to draw you cards, I mean, you can have a hand of 20. Just gain 20 at the beginning of your upkeep casually, just like, well, yeah, whatever, yeah. So really, really cool card. Okay, and then we've got our enchantments. I really only highlighted one here because the other two are kind of generic, like Sylvan Library, you know, stuff like that. But Boon Reflection. This is your other Rock's Faith Mender. It is absolutely bonkers. I struggled to make room for this card in here, but I made sure that I included it. I know Eric is already shaking his head about it because he knows the power of this card. I know he plays it as well. It is absolutely bonkers. For 5 mana, gaining twice the life whenever you gain life, perfect. Even with a kitchen finks, like think about that. That's 4 life right there. That's just ridiculous. And imagine having Boon Reflection and Rock's Faithmender on the board at the same time. It's just like, now then you really want your Aetherflux Reservoir. That's just, yeah, crazy. Okay. Okay, so on from that, we've got our instant speed spells. The first one here is Constant Miss. It's kind of misplaced here, to be honest, but I wanted to highlight it because it's an absolutely ridiculous, amazing card in like land decks. I keep it in here as mainly defensive, but for example, in like an Omnath Locus of Rage deck, like where you're just like cycling through your lands and putting them back into play, like it can be bonkers. Gitrog is another one that this card just fits in like a glove. It has saved my butt many times. It's like the ultimate fog in my opinion, because you can just keep replaying it. That buyback is really, really good. One of these days I hope they bring that mechanic back. I kind of doubt it, but I think it would be really cool. So, and then we've got Beast Within. This is spot removal that not a lot of people use anymore, in my opinion, but I actually really like it. I don't really care about the downside of giving them a 3/3 beast. I mean, most of the time it's not going to matter. The times it does, it sucks, but most of the time it's not going to matter. You can pretty much hit any permanent you want, though, and that's the huge part with this. So 3 costs, just destroy something, whatever you need to. Really, really good. And then we've got a key card in here, Momentous Fall. If you talk to Kylie, this is probably his favorite card of all time in green. So it's really, really good, of course. You can, I mean, I've even used it on Treva to draw 6 cards and gain 6 life. Like, that is not bad at all. And I've also saved myself with Drogskull with this. So, you know, just being able to instant speed flash that and sack it before you draw yourself out. Really, really good. Okay, so on from instants, we've got our sorceries. This one is a new include. It's Wargate. I've never actually really played with the card before I built this deck, and now that I have, I would throw it in any Bant deck that I can. Paying, I know it sounds ridiculous, but paying like 9 mana to get a Dragonlord Dramoka when you need it is not bad. Like, it seems crazy, but it's not bad. I've gotten Boon Reflection with this. I mean, it's extremely versatile, grabbing any permanent that you need to. Like, I've even, you know, in dire straits, grabbed another blue source when I just needed to cast something that had double blue, so, or double green, double white. So, really, really cool card. Plus, the artwork's kind of interesting too. I've always thought it kind of funny. That's kind of a tangent, but like it's got a Sphinx from Esper on it, and it's Bant colored. Kind of odd. Anyway, then we've got a board wipe that should be in the any life gain deck, and that's Fumigate. It's absolutely ridiculous the amount of life you can gain off of this card. You're going to want to destroy everything anyway, so why not gain life while you're doing that? Really cool. One of the big modal spells in the deck, Primal Command. You can pretty much do anything you need to with this. Gain 7 life if you really have to, but the other modes are really what you're looking for. I like grabbing creatures. Yeah, really, really good card. Shuffling your library, all kinds of stuff. And then we've got Urban Evolution. This is probably a card that I've talked about a million times, but I'll continue to talk about it. It is ridiculous how much of an advantage this card provides for you. It's a little bit mid-game, but man, does it do a lot. I mean, just drawing 3 cards and playing an additional land, it's, I mean, all I could ask for at that time, really. I wish, of course, that it cost 1 less, but that's being greedy again, you know. Explosive Vegetation, but way better? No. That would be broken. So it's fairly costed. Then we've got Nissa's Renewal. Yeah, this card's bonkers in here once again, gaining a bunch of life and then just grabbing a whole bunch of lands. Like, I know that there's a few actually like budget modern builds that use this deck or use this card in their decks as well, just because it provides you such a advantage late game. I mean, you grab lands, you gain 7 life, really effective, can keep you in the game. Once again, sustain. So there's that. And then we've got a new include. I just had to put it in here because, you know, it's new and it's foil and I like it. I got it out of one of my packs from Amonkhet. It's Mouth to Feed. It's a interesting card. It gives you a 3/3 token on the first side, so not bad. But the second side is draw a card for each creature you control with power 3 or greater. So it's a massive, I mean, draw if you have a board state. You know, you just have like, I mean, for example, even at like a really kind of poor board state, like let's just say you have like Dramoka and Treva, like 2 6/6s, you're still drawing 2 cards for 4 mana. So I mean, that's harmonized right there. So I mean, think about that. If you have like 5 4/4s or something like that, I mean, that's drawing 5 cards for 4 mana. So it's not bad either way you look at it. Plus, it's in your graveyard, so you can use it pretty much when you need to. So yeah, Mouth to Feed. Okay, on to our lands. We've got one of my favorites, once again, for Innistrad. I love that block, so there's a lot of cards that you'll see from around there. And Alchemist's Refuge. It's not as good as Winding Canyons in some ways, but in some other ways it's better because it lets you cast pretty much anything. The downside, of course, having to pay colored mana to do it, whereas Winding Canyons you don't have to pay, it's just colorless. So, interesting card. I know I've cast Wargate off of it before, or, you know, once again, like flashing in Dromoka is never a bad idea. So yeah, Alchemist's Refuge, really, really cool. And then we've got Blighted Woodland. I think I've talked about this cycle before, but it's really actually effective, especially if you're playing, once again, with like Eldrazi Displacer, stuff like that. Things like that require that colorless mana, and then if you don't need it anymore, you just sacrifice it and go grab 2 lands and put them into play. So not bad at all. And then Mystic Gate. I bought pretty much a whole cycle of these recently, and I've kind of been putting them where I need to. The filter lands, they're interesting. They're good, of course. I don't know, I'm iffy on them because sometimes I get them and I'm just kind of like, why do I have this in here? Doesn't make any sense, especially if you can't like pay into it to make the actual colors that you want. So I don't know. I'm lukewarm about these. I know they're good, but I don't know. Sometimes I wish I just had a shock land. So anyway, there's Mystic Gate. And then once again, we've got a budget option that I wanted to talk about in Treva's Ruins. I talked about this in the last Esper video. It's an interesting cycle. It's the full, I said the full shard cycle, I think. Yeah, that's where they're included, I guess. So once again, just a budget option. If you can't really afford like a bunch of like the, I don't know, Shockland, stuff like that, just throw it in there. I know it feels really bad taking essentially land back to your hand and not going up 1 land like with the bounce lands, but I don't know, sometimes it's really important to get your colors, of course. So anyway, with that is Treva. We will see you guys next week, of course, with our next deck. I think we're moving on to probably Naya, and then we're going to try and do 2 a week. I guess I should probably touch on that a little bit. We're going to try and speed this up a little bit because I know it's been going on for I don't know how many weeks, but we're going to probably do, you know, 2 of the shards and then a shard and a wedge, something like that. So anyway, we will catch you guys next time. Of course, like, favorite, subscribe as always, and yeah, we'll see you later.